Psychological Types by Carl Gustav Jung. Extroverted feeling. Feeling in the extroverted attitude is likewise oriented by objective data, the object being the indispensable determinant of the quality of feeling. The extrovert's feeling is always in harmony with objective values. For anyone who has known feeling only as something subjective, the nature of extroverted feeling will be difficult to grasp, because it has detached itself as much as possible from the subjective factor and subordinated itself entirely to the influence of the object. Even when it appears not to be qualified by a concrete object, it is nonetheless still under the spell of traditional or generally accepted values of some kind. I may feel moved, for instance, to say that something is beautiful or good, not because I find it beautiful or good, for my own subjective feeling about it, but because it is fitting and polite to call it so, since a contrary judgment would upset the general feeling situation. A feeling judgment of this kind is not by any means a pretense or a lie. It is simply an act of adjustment. A painting, for instance, is called beautiful because a painting hung in a drawing room and bearing a well-known signature is generally assumed to be beautiful, or because to call it hideous would presumably offend the family of its fortunate possessor, or because the visitor wants to create a pleasant feeling atmosphere, for which purpose everything must be felt as agreeable. These feelings are governed by an objective criterion. As such, they are genuine and represent the feeling function as a whole. In precisely the same way as extroverted thinking strives to rid itself of subjective influences, extroverted feeling has to undergo a process of differentiation before it is finally denuded of every subjective trimming. The valuations resulting from the act of feeling either correspond directly with objective values or accord with traditional and generally accepted standards. This kind of feeling is very largely responsible for the fact that so many people flock to the theater or to concerts or go to church and do so moreover with their feelings correctly adjusted. Fashions, too, owe their whole existence to it, and, what is far more valuable, the positive support of social, philanthropic, and other such cultural institutions. In these matters, extroverted feeling proves itself a creative factor. Without it, a harmonious social life would be impossible. To that extent, extroverted feeling is just as beneficial and sweetly reasonable in its effects as extroverted thinking. But these salutary effects are lost as soon as the object gains ascendancy. The force of extroverted feeling then pulls the personality into the object assimilates him, whereupon the personal quality of the feeling, which constitutes its chief charm, disappears. It becomes cold, unfeeling, untrustworthy. It has ulterior motives, or at least makes an impartial observer suspect them. It no longer makes that agreeable and refreshing impression which invariably accompanies genuine feeling. Instead, one suspects a pose, or that the person is acting, even though he might quite be unconscious of any egocentric motives. Over-extroverted feeling may satisfy aesthetic expectations, but it does not speak to the heart. It appeals merely to the senses or, worse still, only to reason. It can provide the aesthetic padding for a situation, but there it stops, and beyond that its effect is nil. It has become sterile. If this process goes any further, a curiously contradictory dissociation of feeling results. Everything becomes an object of feeling valuations, and innumerable relationships are entered into which are at all at variance with each other. As this situation would become quite impossible if the subject received anything like due emphasis, even the last vestiges of a real personal standpoint are suppressed. The subject becomes so enmeshed in the network of individual feeling processes that to the observer it seems as though there were merely a feeling process and no longer a subjective feeling. Feeling in this state has lost all human warmth. It gives the impression of being put on, fickle, unreliable, and in the worst cases hysterical.